Continue our discussion with Mulle Musau as we figure out where we're going to go to next. These electoral laws that have been passed, that debate. You were telling us about before, about the electoral process and how important voter education is. So let's attempt to do a little bit of that now, because you've been saying that the electoral process has 8 phases. If you can, very briefly, let's attempt to do some voter education. Hopefully it won't get us in trouble with the government. But, just take us through these 8 phases that you have talked about today.
Now, we have the legal framework. And the legal framework is key. That is the biggest issue that we are discussing today, what is happening in Parliament. That there are a number of, from the electoral system itself to the processes, to the management of the elections, they are all embedded, underpinned in electoral laws. And there are quite a number of them. We have the Elections Act, we have the IBC Act, we have laws on the political parties, which still are akin to elections. We have the campaign financing, again, which is one of them which has been watered down today, the Campaign Financing Act. So all these laws are put together, and the regulations thereof of those laws, which are supposed to explain the process of the elections, who is managing the elections, what are the rights and the responsibilities of the voters and the other actors in the process. So that's an entire legal framework.
Yeah.
So that's one of the process, that's one of the issues that is supposed to be done. Then there is the other process of voter education as a process itself. In this country, we are providing for a continuous voter education process. It's embedded in our laws again. So you want throughout the entire cycle, there is information which must be coming through to the voters, and therefore the managers of elections, including the facilitating ministries, are supposed to ensure that information goes out to the public in terms of their electoral process and what they are supposed to do. There is voter registration as a process, again provided as a continuous exercise, and people need to know how are they supposed to get registered, where are they supposed to be registered, who is eligible for registration, for instance, the centers which are gazetted by the commission or the managers of the election, and what is needed as far as the registration process is concerned.
Yeah.
So again, that carries out through the entire period. We have political parties and campaigns. People want to know about political parties. Because they are major actors in an election process. Granted, we have independent candidates, but the candidature itself, the participation in the election as a candidate, and the eventual campaigns themselves, because they have to be managed. We have had discussions. Which have already begun.
Illegally, even before the scheduled time.
And then we have the voting operations.
Yeah.
That is the election day. Now it's just one of the processes.
Right.
We have the results verification process, which happens immediately after, and then the last of the processes is a post-election environment where we are having dispute issues, petitions, and eventual by-elections. So those are the phases of the elections, and people need to know about them.
Yeah.
And that is where the essence of voter education comes in, because you and I, you're saying you're learning a number of things right now.
Yeah, I was just saying that to you during the break. Yeah.
But what about that ordinary voter in the village?
Right.
They need to know that these are the processes, because this is a country. Sovereignty means I understand that I'm living in this country, and I also understand the processes of ensuring that my country remains
and can therefore
to me.
Actively participate in governance.
Yeah, because the biggest problem about, especially voting in this country, is functional illiteracy. That people do not understand what to do where.
And that is not even persons who perhaps are illiterate in that sense of the word. There's lots of literate people, even professors, I dare say, in different respects, who may not understand the electoral processes.
We have seen we have seen this happening in elections. We have covered elections from 2010 as ELOG. We can tell you the number of spoiled votes usually is as a result of people not knowing what to do. The number of people who don't even participate in the entire process also don't know. People who leave school
like
don't
a very
understand.
daunting process, isn't it? I mean, when you take a look at what we've seen in the National Assembly, and someone asks, so what was that? What just happened? And that sort of thing. It really is a daunting process to want to participate in an electoral process.
Apathy.
For the average.
Voter apathy is the major reason obtaining from voter apathy is because people don't know about the process. I was having a conversation with students at Catholic University, and that was the issue. We were asking them how many in this entire room of about 100 people are going to participate in the next election, because they get the information they get from the media and the kind of things they see, like what happened in Parliament, portrays a kind of a process which is acrimonious,
Yeah.
which nobody wants to bother with.
Complicated.
It's too complicated.
Yeah.
But if you make them understand that first is an act of patriotism, and not just patriotism, it's an action of you making decisions about how your country is supposed to be run and managed, they start understanding. And you cannot do that without them understanding what therefore is this process, what is the objectives of this particular process, and what do we intend to be able to get out of this particular process. So you want to tell them these are the objectives, you want to tell them that these are your responsibilities, these are the rights that you have in this, and clearly outline for them the procedures, and in a way that makes it simple for them. The reason why we even try to peg the number of polling stations, the cap to be at 500, because you want the reach from the election management body to be as far as possible, as close as possible to the wananchi, so that they don't have to trek long distances to participate in this process, which is supposed to be for them.
Okay, all right. I'd like your reaction, therefore, to the news that's just come in. The selection panel has shortlisted 2 persons for the chair and another 9 as commissioners for the IEBC. Just your reaction to some of those names we're seeing there. Some are familiar to many, some are not. Samuel Kimeo stands out from Transparency International. What are your thoughts?
My first thing is to congratulate the panel, because I think they have done this. They've tried to expedite the process as fast as they can. Remember, there was some stalling here and there when they had to re-advertise even for the position of the chair. So I'm very happy that we have what people are saying, that there will be a kind of a Christmas present from the panel, where we'll be given names, or even a short list of a name that can be now presented to the president as happened. So that's already in view of what is happening in Parliament, I think that's already progress, that now, which is like a good light, that we have names now from where we can be able to pick. In terms of, as an observer, of course, I wouldn't want to discuss in terms of who within that. The only thing which is very interesting is that we have 9, we're supposed to be having 7 commissioners. There are 3 ladies already in the 9, which is a near guarantee that the 3 ladies will be in the final shortlist. Although again, of course, the chairman makes that 7, the number 7.
Yes.
So, but still, what is a third of 7? That would be about 2 point something, and it's nothing like a point as far as human beings are concerned.
Right.
So that's 3.
Okay.
So I nearly see. Unless something changes, and if you're going to abide by the rules in terms of the gender parity, we already have 3 names which you can be able to near guarantee that they're going to be in the final list of commissioners.
All right, some good news, over the last week with all the events we've seen, and indeed even what we've seen today. For you, you're saying, at least the announcement of these nominees is some good progress?
Of course, now the camera, the lens turns to the president.
Yes.
In terms of, can you quickly go through the list and make recommendations to Parliament for Parliament to be able to approve. Now, with that, of course, the next issue is that Parliament has adjourned to the 24th of January. So that means then that those names shall be presented to them when they reconvene.
Right.
And then upon debate, we are looking at the end of January when we're going to be having the new commission in office. It affects some.
Certainly not. But there's a lot of people who are worried now, taking a look at the atmosphere. Members of National Assembly are themselves attacking each other, allegedly. Pepper spray, guns. We've seen, some really wild accusations out there from, even on social media, those who may not have seen a Facebook post alleged to be by some police officer who, wants to assassinate others. One MP threatening sexual assault on another one insulting the president, counterclaims of assault. We've seen, we saw Aden Duale saying, no, in fact, it was Jacoyo Midiwo who assaulted Mburi. Jacoyo Midiwo saying it's the other way around. Kenyans are watching all of this, and there's quite a bit of apprehension on this Christmas Eve, but on this larger eve, if you like, of the elections, and Kenyans are worried. Are you?
No, I'm very worried. I'm very worried because those are the leaders who are supposed to be taking us or giving a direction in terms of how we are going to do the elections in 2017. Thank God that we have what you call an independent electoral commission, and it needs to show its independence from these kind of activities.
And that's a good question. Will it?
It needs to show, because I think based on the fact that we're going to be having new commissioners, and based on the fact that the context of the removal of the other commissioners was based on issues about integrity and public trust, then we expect them as soon as they come into the office, especially with the new commission, we expect them to take actions to show their independence. Some of the names which are coming through, if they end up being picked, are people who we known for some time that they can be able to, espouse a level of independence that can be dependent on. So I think for me, the new commission, once it comes, it needs to take up the responsibility of trying to show that it's an independent commission and that it's a people's commission. The issues and the acrimony which has been created by what we've seen in Parliament and over the last 1 week, even in terms of the leadership of the country, are things we do not want to see close up to the election. I'm a little bit happy that this is happening 6 months to the elections or 7 months to the elections, because if it happened around June, we would not even have an election.
So we pray that we don't see these scenes around June, similar scenes.
We should never ever see them at any stage.
Okay.
But you also heard from I think the opposition when Jacoyo Midio was talking. I think there is already an inclination towards trying to create or not participating in the entire process. So those are not very good.
Duale says that whether or not Raila Odinga participates in the election doesn't exactly nullify the process.
Yes, and the same position, that's the same position that Duale has taken. That, at the end of the day, we don't care whether they are going to participate. That brinkmanship is what is not going to augur very well for this country, because those are the events which took the country to war in 2007. Okay,
so you're saying this should not happen, but let's take a look at a statement that was made, I believe, by Jacoyo Midio when we had him live here on News Center a short while ago, when he was explaining why they walked out of Parliament, saying it was a futile exercise, that the amendments would have been passed anyway, whether they were present or not. And he said the language that a tyrant understands is the language of the people, and that they are now going to the streets. Do you foresee this going down that road? Do you see CORD resorting to this? And what would be the effect of CORD legislators going to the streets, months to the election?
Politicians are politicians. The opposition went to the street once this year, and they got something out in return. They went out saying that they wanted to see the commission out of office. Eventually, that is what exactly happened. It's going to be the easier option out for them, and I'm not speaking for them, because I'm thinking that they are going to be more inclined to go to the street if they think they cannot be able to sit together.
Do you think it'll be worse this time? Because they say they've been betrayed. They went to the streets, then there was an attempt at bipartisanship with the JPSC, and then they all agreed, and I think the whole country remembers this, when both Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga asked the members of National Assembly to pass the amendments without changing so much as a comma or a full stop. And then this happens afterwards, and then CORD says they're going back to the streets. Do you think there's now an element of mistrust? What is that thing that would get them off the streets should it come to that?
The biggest word in this country, as far as elections are concerned, is trust. That's the biggest word from where I sit. Because the question is going to be, do we trust Chiloba to run things at IEBC? Do we trust members of parliament to do the right thing?
Duale says, do we trust the judiciary? There's trust, mistrust all around.
This country, one of the areas that we have been doing very badly is in terms of trust, because we don't give Yvonne time to be able to adjudicate what the responsibilities that we bestowed upon her. We are quick to throw stones. We are quick to create perceptions about where she's heading, whether it's an ethnic issue or not. And that's why I was appealing earlier to the interventions by players outside this. Because that is actually how we ended up having the JPSC. Because by having other people coming into play, the broader civil society, led by the churches, we started seeing some decorum, some process taking shape.
Do you think
otherwise, these guys, from where I sit, I don't think Parliament is going to lead us in the right direction.
Mulle, do you think civil society is able to coalesce around this issue, speak for the people, and actually effect some change? There's been this big question about the efficacy of civil society, or rather the relevance of it, since I suppose 2002, 2003, when NARC ended 40 years of Kanu's reign and 24 years of President Moi's rule. And some say since then, members of civil society jumped into politics, and some of them are legislators, senators, members of parliament that we see now. What can civil society possibly do right now, which is different from going to the streets like CORD is doing, or passing laws like Jubilee MPs are doing in the National Assembly. What is that thing that civil society can do, can coalesce around, that then changes the narrative, that then cools down the temperatures or brings sobriety into the conversation?
You see, when I'm talking about, you've heard me insisting using the word broader, because sometimes when you're talking about civil society, we tend to think about only those governance-oriented civil society groups making noise, as the president was even calling them the other day.
Yes.
But the broader civil society includes even the churches, and even to some extent the media. They can be able to be brought into the fray.
Right.
But we have seen the most recent example that we can be able to use in terms of the civil society coming together is the recent example of the multi-sectoral forum, which was brought together, especially with the leadership of the churches. And organizations such as the ELOG, organizations such as the Kenya Human Rights Commission, they all came together to participate in a process, made recommendations, came up, drafted memoranda that could be used in the stead of whatever, which was running parallel to whatever Parliament was doing, so that it would be taken through the parliamentary process, but based on that broader coalition. I've also seen the effect of even such, in some of the meetings that we had with the JPSC, I saw the respect even some of the politicians accord to members of the civil society and the church. And therefore, they are willing to listen to them to some extent. So sobriety will not come. You expect the first premise of sobriety to come from the president or the presidency, because it's a uniting office. But so far, I don't think that is what is coming out. It is being seen, again, because of trust, it is being seen to be partisan. The next level would have been Parliament, because that's where we have all our representatives. They sit together, they debate these issues, they are good friends with each other. We are not seeing that coming from them. That's why I say now it must be an extra official arrangement where you have civil society, especially now that the church is starting to gain ground. And I'm speaking about the church deliberately, because it has been gaining.
Because that would be my question. Does anyone trust the church or religious leaders anymore?
It had lost the trust of people, especially in the debates over the referendum, for quite some time. But it's been picking up itself. They've been talking about nearly every issue.
Let me ask this question, though, if we can focus on the church for just a minute. KTN News covered very, seriously the election of, or rather, the election of the Anglican elections. And we haven't heard much from him on issues reigning in the country. Corruption, electoral processes, persons fighting in the legislature like we're seeing on our screens now. We haven't really heard much from the Archbishop of the Anglican Church.
Well, you're picking on one.
I'm picking on one, as sort of a representative of religious leaders as a whole.
I don't think that would be
my
fair.
Question is, let me make it more general. Do you think anybody trusts the church anymore? And when you say they're gaining trust, how so? And let's remove the fact that we might possibly have one of the members of the church heading the EACC. But in what way? Because now we're seeing church and politicians and receiving donations from politicians that Kenyans are really unhappy with.
A very simple example that I can be able to give you is that we had a panel. Remember the selection panel, which is choosing the commissioners, the one which has even just presented the names. Who led that panel? Basically, it was a church-led panel. And there were interventions that the church made early in the year, which to some extent made them look objective. When NCCK and the Catholics sat back and talked about corruption in the country early in the year, people say, because they might be speaking about these issues. The rest of the civil society has been speaking about this. And I can assure you, all the civil society groups which are out there, whether it's Transparency International of Samuel Kimeu, whether it is the Kenya Human Rights Commission with George Kegoro, whether it is the Election Observation Group, whether it is the CSO Reference Group, they have been actually out there. I think for me, it's a question of attention not really being focused on them because they've been making noise, or they are merely rendered as noise makers all the time. Only when issues become thick like this, we start running back to them and asking them, what are you guys saying as far as this is concerned? But I think the entry, for me, what I'm saying, I'm bringing the clout issue, that the entry of the church into the fray consolidates the voice.
And might give us that prized commodity of trust?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, we have to end it there. But thank you so much for your insights. We've had some voter education. Mulle Musau, who's a coordinator at the Election Observers Group. Please do come again and again. We love hearing from you and getting educated. He's been with me from 10 o'clock all the way up until now. Let's lighten the mood a little bit. He says trust is the biggest commodity in our electoral process. Sadly, though, trust is not something you can legislate, but we hope it is something that can be built over time amongst us as Kenyans. Thank you very much. Mulle Musau from ELOG. You're watching